I want to invite you again into our kitchen like I so often do, even while living in town in this temporary kitchen that has a few challenges. It's a little small. I know it's hard to tell on camera how things function and the size of things, but I can tell you that if more than 2 or 3 people are in this kitchen at one time, which I guess that's probably the case for a lot of kitchens, it can feel a little cramped, a little different than I'm used to in my old kitchen, where some people could stand on one side of the island with a stool pulled up, watching me cook or helping prep something or cut something, or someone could be sitting over at the dining room table doing some of that. This kitchen just simply doesn't allow for that. So we're making it all work, but even still, the people need to eat, and I try my best to cook as from scratch as possible. There are ways to do this with very quick, simple meals. One of those is something I'm making today, something that we make a lot when we don't really have a plan and it's just something we can throw together quick. And then there are things that I prep ahead for. I'll make a dough that needs to ferment and then rise again the next day. Not a lot of hands-on time, but a little bit of prep time. There's all of that going on in our kitchen at various times. And there'll be a little bit of both of that this week as well. If you watch a lot of my videos, you've seen some form of creamy chicken with pasta many times. Because you can thaw out chicken breast at least really quickly, I can have this meal very fast because we always have cream. I just need to sear the chicken, add a little bit of cream and some spices and maybe some milk or flour to thicken it up or to make it a little thinner, and then serve that over pasta. We do that a lot. Add some cheese, maybe Parmesan, maybe mozzarella. But lately I have been adding some canned tomatoes and some cream cheese. If you have a bunch of tomatoes in your garden, this is fabulous because you can add fresh tomatoes. And then in the end, we also are going to add some basil. So it turns into a creamy tomato basil chicken pasta. I have worn this out like I tend to do. I end up making the same thing over and over again. When I like it and it works, we just keep doing it. And so I might have worn this one out because we just keep doing it. I'm stepping aside while that simmers and develops some flavor to throw together some pizza dough that we will enjoy using tomorrow on obviously homemade pizzas. I will just mix the dough up by hand and then throughout the afternoon and evening do about 3 or 4 stretch and folds. Now my chicken felt a little thick, or it looked a little thick after I let it simmer a while. You know me, I don't really do a ton of measuring with recipes like this, and so we just see how it turns out and then add milk tableside as needed. This turns out so tender because it cooks in the tomatoes and the cream, so it makes the chicken a bit softer. I like to add crushed red pepper flakes to mine, and the kids like just the chicken and the pasta. My usual sourdough pizza dough recipe calls for 4 cups of flour. I wanted to do this mostly whole grain, so I was just basing it off of how much flour I milled, which I don't measure throwing the grains in, so we just see what happens when it's all said and done. And I ended up with about 4 cups of freshly milled flour. So I decided to do 4 cups of freshly milled and 2 cups of all-purpose. That means that obviously it's about 2/3 whole grain, and then followed the rest of the recipe as it is written on farmhouseonmoon.com, except for 1.5 times since I'm doing 6 cups instead of 4 cups. I started that dough probably before noon yesterday and let it ferment until bedtime, and then I put it in the refrigerator because right now in the summer, if I let something go for 24 hours, it gets a little too over fermented. So I popped it in the fridge, and then today, since it calls for 4 cups on the regular recipe and I did 6 cups, I am making 6 pizza dough balls that I will then roll out and top accordingly. So I always, when we do pizzas, make a few that are more for the adults or the older kids that like different flavor profiles, and then I make some that are super kid friendly. And I like that about pizza. I like that about a lot of meals. You will find that there are a lot of toppings and add-ons and things that you can put on if you're a little bit more adventurous. And then if you're a kid and your palate just doesn't want to accept all that, there's always something for you as well. I don't really have super picky kids. I always find that the younger kids are a little bit pickier and then they grow out of it. But I do want to encourage you, because people wonder how to get kids to eat certain things. I just let them pick and choose from what we're having. I don't make anything super special, but if it's easy to do so, like in the case of pizzas, why not just make them one that has sauce and cheese and maybe some bacon or salami or pepperoni or sausage if I have it. Some of those easy to like kid things, and then fancy some up for the adults. So I'll do things like that. You can't tell me 100% I don't like pizza or I don't like meat and rice. Those are the options. However, you can dole yours down. That's kind of how we handle it with our kids. And I've never had any children pickier than that. They can always find something to eat from what I'm making. And I always tell them too, not everything has to be your favorite food in the entire world. You can eat something that you don't love, but I also understand really not liking certain things. I use cast iron skillets to bake my pizza crust. I make sure they're really preheated, and if they have gotten a little bit cool because I had it out for a minute while swapping out another cast iron skillet, because I can only fit 3 in my oven at a time and I only have 3 large cast iron skillets, I will put them on the stovetop and just warm them back up with the gas burner. And then once they're partially cooked, I can pop them out and put them on baking sheets to top them so I can have several pizzas going at once, even with a standard size oven. Pizza is always our family's favorite way to use up locally foraged chanterelles, which are in abundance right now. In our homes as mothers and homemakers, our family's health is the reason why we take great effort to cook from scratch and source quality ingredients and learn all of these skills. When I looked at the cleaning products in our home, I noticed that nearly everything is full of unnecessary chemicals. And when I looked into what I was actually using around my home, laundry detergent was the worst offender. So many popular brands are packed with harsh chemicals that can irritate your skin, disrupt hormones, and even cause allergic reactions. But I don't want that stuff around my home and my family, so I switched to EarthBreeze. Their detergent sheets are free from harsh chemicals like optical brighteners, dyes, parabens, phosphates, and preservatives. No heavy plastic jugs, no mess, no mystery ingredients, just a lightweight, pre-measured sheet that dissolves in the wash and gets the job done. And your clothes still come out clean, fresh, and soft. I feel so much better knowing that I'm not exposing my family to unnecessary toxins. If you're looking for a powerful clean without harsh chemicals, try EarthBreeze. It's easy to switch, and if you're not completely satisfied, they have an awesome money back guarantee. Right now, you can try EarthBreeze for up to 40% off plus 4 free gifts with my link, earthbreeze.com/farmhouse on Boone. I'll also leave it linked down in the description box below, or you can grab this QR code right here. That's earthbreeze.com/farmhouse on Boone for 40% off and 4 free gifts. As usual, I will leave all links below for the recipes that you see in these videos, because I have a food blog where I share all of our family's favorite recipes. If you want mealtime inspiration on a regular basis, I always forget to tell you all about our email newsletter where we send out seasonal ideas as well as all the latest new recipes, which I eventually try to put here on the channel. But ultimately, as a busy mom, I end up dropping a lot of balls. And so I will have one thing going and then forget to tell you about it here. Like I forget so often to tell you about things I've been doing over on the Simple Farmhouse Live podcast. And then I forget to mention certain recipes. So if you want to stay in the loop on that in real time, you can head over to farmhouseonboone.com, and on the home page, if you scroll down past the latest recipes, past the About Lisa, there's a section where it says Farmhouse Favorite Sourdough Recipes, where you can enter your name and your email, and I will send you my 50 favorite sourdough recipes to download, and then you'll be signed up for the email list once you download that. So that is a great way to stay in the loop about seasonal recipes, new recipes that we are testing and loving over here in our farmhouse kitchen. And I say farmhouse, and people say, you don't live in a farmhouse anymore. That is so true, but only for a year. And so I'm just going to keep saying farmhouse, and I'm going to have chickens in the backyard and a little garden and pick my herbs and hang up onions on hooks in the kitchen. I can call it a farmhouse. You can all call your homes a farmhouse. Let's just say if you produce any food at all, it's kind of a farm, right? Can use that term loosely. But one of those new recipes is stuffed pepper soup. and I just love this one. A couple weeks ago, Luke and the oldest 4 kids had something they needed to do every night for a week, and it made the most sense for me to stay home with the youngest 4. But they didn't get home till 10 o'clock each night. And so the little boys, they're kind of easy to feed because I'll say, would you prefer eggs or a snacky type of dinner with meats and cheeses? They always love that kind of thing. And then after they went to bed, I would warm me up more of my stuffed pepper soup, add a bunch of jalapenos and some shredded cheese and fresh herbs. And that is the perfect little meal just for me. While that soup simmers and the rice cooks, I am getting some sourdough hamburger buns going for tomorrow. I'm doing this one half whole grain and half all-purpose just for the texture of it and for the taste, but it also does taste absolutely great with all whole grain. There are certain things that aren't so great with all whole grain, but doable, and then certain things where they're quite delicious with all whole grain. And this is one of them. I will use the rest of the flour that I milled to feed my starter for a future endeavor, whatever that may be. Most of the time, I double my sourdough hamburger recipe so that we have plenty, and it really never hurts to even triple it because you can use them for hamburgers, of course, but then they're also great bread for sandwiches, even to toast it. There's really not an amount of bread that I could possibly overmake. I let that sit for a while to soak up the liquid in the dough and then do stretch and folds throughout the afternoon. Sort of like the pizza dough, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to let it ferment all throughout the afternoon and evening, and then I will put it in the fridge just right in the same bowl that it's already in, either covered with a damp tea towel or plastic wrap or foil, and then I'll get it back out of the fridge tomorrow to shape, rise a second time, and bake. I always talk about using the refrigerator to your advantage with sourdough, and then also using heat to your advantage, which I'm going to show here very shortly how I do that, especially with something that has a lot of whole grain that tends to over ferment and get a little too sour. Not really over ferment in the sense that it gets soupy like some doughs can, but it definitely can get not super edible when it ferments too long, because it can taste very sour with the whole grain. So I'm always telling people to not worry too much about when you start something sourdough, but just manipulate it with refrigeration, with heat, see where it is at certain moments. So as you can see, I have this little makeshift warming station on my oven. I had a wonderful one on my last oven, but this one doesn't really have a spot in the middle. So if I'm baking something else, which today I'm also baking bagels, I'll remove a couple of the grates and then put my dough on top of the oven on parchment paper so that the heat of the oven that I'm already baking something with will make them rise really quickly. So in the case of these buns, I pulled them out of the fridge this morning, the dough out of the fridge this morning, shaped it, and then I rose it while I was baking my bagels this morning, and now they are already baked and ready for lunchtime. So you can actually make sourdough really fast, because if you don't put it in a really warm place, it will take a lot of the day to get your dough as fluffy as you want it. But if you put it in a warm spot, which it could be near a wood stove in the wintertime or on top of your oven when you're baking something else, I'm almost always manipulating doughs in some form or fashion, whether it's to slow it down because I need to go to bed and I don't want to make it today, or putting it on top of something really warm to make it rise really fast. Usually when I'm using the warm part of this, that's because I'm trying to make the second rise go really fast. I'm almost always doing that. I almost never just let something just sit at room temperature and rise how it will. There's usually some manipulating going. And then usually I'm using the refrigerator after it's done the bulk ferment to pause that. So that's typically how I'm doing it. The only opposite case is when I'm making a no-knead sourdough boule. I will let it ferment at room temperature, and then I will put it in the fridge to do the second rise. But typically on any other dough, it's the opposite. I do the same thing with bagels. I almost never just let bagels rise how they will. I let them do a nice long first ferment, but then on the second rise, I make them go faster so we can have them quickly. Alongside my burgers today, I am serving some classic summer foods. Sweet corn that I found from a local farmer, And then also the dill potato salad is a new recipe over on farmhouseonboone.com. This is a great one to bring to a gathering because it makes a good amount and it has wonderful flavor. It adds dill and pickles and pickled juice. It's delicious. I wanted to speed it up, so I actually threw my potatoes in the freezer after boiling them because I was trying in less than an hour to have lunch on the table. And really what you should do is you should boil the potatoes maybe the day before or several hours before, but that's not always possible. And, the recipe on the blog calls for you to put the potato salad into the fridge for several hours, which is great. And this makes a great leftover. We didn't eat this all in one sitting. We did eat it for leftovers as well. And it does taste great after it sits in the fridge. But I'm always going for just sustenance in food and great flavor, but not always perfection. And I'm okay with serving a potato salad that hasn't had the flavor perfectly developed in the refrigerator. When making burgers, I usually will cook them most of the way on a cast iron skillet and then put them on a baking sheet to finish off and to add the cheese. Just because the volume that I'm trying to make, it's hard to do them all stovetop, so I'll use a sheet pan to finish that process off, and that works great for us. We have no ripe tomatoes yet in our garden, but I have been able to find some roadside stands and farmers markets to get my hands on some fresh homegrown tomatoes, which is just the flavor of the season. It's the only way I even like tomatoes, but I sure do love them in the summertime. This next one you're going to find a bit weird from me, and you're going to think, is this even Farmhouse on Boone? And it's not even on the blog. But Luke and I had the thought independently, and who knows where something comes into your head. I'm sure we both saw it in the same place and just maybe it's trending. I don't know. Got the notion that we wanted to make ramen at home. And this isn't something I'm going to make all the time, but I've been to a ramen restaurant before, and it's so tasty. You're just taking noodles, throwing some really delicious and nice toppings on top, like soft-boiled eggs and fresh cut veggies, possibly some chicken, simmering bone broth with ginger and garlic and mushrooms and soy sauce, or in our case, we like to use coconut aminos for a soy sauce alternative. It's just really good. We all really enjoy it. For the younger kids, again, we just did the noodle mixture. So that had some carrots and mushrooms, ginger, garlic, coconut aminos, salt, pepper, broth, and then topped theirs with chicken. And then we also had some toppings for whoever else wanted it. So scallions and peppers, hard-boiled eggs, sesame seeds. Now, the eggs were supposed to be soft-boiled, but I forgot about them. So they are hard-boiled, but that's okay. I added a bit more broth to all of the adults' bowls as well, just because it's easier to feed kids things that aren't as soupy, and it's less messy to feed them things that aren't as soupy. But I really like when ramen's a bit more soupy. We ate it all way too fast, didn't have any leftovers, but definitely enjoyed it. Not shown in this video are tons of trips to the farm. Every day we head out there to check on the progress. Things are moving along. There's lots of things that we are going to be doing as well, and I think that it's going to get a little bit intense shortly because a lot of the things that we want to do are past the framing stage, and a lot of these big infrastructure things that are really coming into place. I've been thinking about the next 6 months and how fast things are going to move, or even, 6 months is not that fast. But I think over the next 6 months is when we're going to see everything just completely take shape. All of the things I've been gathering and collecting will find a place in the home and make it come together. I cannot wait to share all of those details with you. I know a lot of you are here for the house story, the content surrounding building out our farm and our homestead dreams over on our farm, and that's all coming. I'm trying to share it all in real time as it's happening. I've never built a house before, but I think that the next 6 months or so is where it's all going to take shape. I know this too because so many things have been coming in. Things that I ordered many, many months ago are starting to pile up. So many boxes, so many things in the garage, and soon they're going to make their way into the space and we can see it all come together, which is both exciting and then also a little nerve-wracking. Like, did we choose the right thing? I'm sure it won't be perfect, but a beautiful space and a space that we're excited to raise our family nonetheless is coming together. So stay tuned for all of that. I hope you all are having a wonderful summer and making lots of delicious food in your kitchen as well.